The navy blue scarf still smelled like ocean wind and Chanel No. 5. I wore it the day I gave my son everything, and the day he made me regret it. I'm Lisa Morrison. I'm 69 now. I spent 36 years teaching sociology at a small liberal arts college in Wilmington, North Carolina. I retired last spring. I was ready. My back ached by the third hour of lectures, and the campus had started to feel louder, younger, faster. It was time. I'd planned well, financially. A mix of my pension, some annuity income, and a modest inheritance from my father kept me comfortable, not extravagant, but solid. I'd paid off my condo, kept up the car, donated to the library, and my church. I didn't need much. 12 years ago, I lost my husband, Jerome, a quiet man who loved crossword puzzles, Sunday drives, and jazz records. We raised one child, Luther. Luther is 38 now, works in digital branding, and wears shoes that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He's sharp, always has been. Always had that charm, that smooth talk that made people believe in him. He never liked waiting for anything. A few months ago, he called to tell me he'd proposed to his girlfriend, Talia. She said yes. Now, I'd only met Talia a handful of times. She plans luxury events, think celebrity baby showers and influencer retreats. The kind of person who walks into a room and makes everyone feel underdressed. She called me ma'am the first time we met and corrected the waiter's pronunciation of bruschetta at dinner. Still, I was happy for them. I told Luther as much. He seemed genuinely thrilled. 2 weeks after the engagement, he came by with a binder. Yes, a whole binder, full of wedding plans. Venue in Sonoma Valley, drone videographers, custom-designed flower walls, a Michelin-starred chef. I flipped through the pages slowly. He sipped his oat milk latte and said it casually. We're looking at about $140,000 altogether. We'd like you to contribute half. I blinked. 70,000. I asked, just to make sure I'd heard right. Yeah, he said. I mean, you've got that inheritance, right? And you're not working anymore. I looked at him. My son, the boy I used to take to the beach every August, the man who once cried when he lost his first job and came to sleep on my couch for 3 weeks. He looked at me now like I was a bank teller holding up the line. I can offer 12, I said slowly. That's what I can comfortably give. He looked at Talia, then back at me. 12 won't cover even the deposit on the vineyard. I said nothing. It's not just a wedding, Mom, he continued. It's a brand. It'll set us up professionally. You always told me to invest in my future. That's true. I did say that, but I meant education, work ethic, learning how to budget. I didn't mean a branded hashtag wedding with neon signs and champagne fountains. They left shortly after. No hugs, no warmth, just tight jaws and cold glances. 3 weeks passed. No texts, no calls. I told myself I'd give it time. Let him cool off. But deep down, I felt something break. Something I wasn't sure could be patched back together with another pot roast and an apology. Then one Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Luther. Hey, Mom, he said, can we talk? Just us. Over dinner. I miss you. He picked the place, Salt House, a beautiful seafood restaurant on the edge of town. Jerome and I had gone there to celebrate when I got tenure back in '91. It held weight, memories. I wanted to believe this was a step forward, that he wanted to see me as his mother again, not just a sponsor. So I agreed. I spent more time picking my outfit than I'd care to admit. Settled on a charcoal cardigan, a teal blouse, slacks, and that navy scarf Jerome bought me during our last trip to Charleston. It still carried a trace of perfume and salt. I arrived 10 minutes early. Salt House hadn't changed much. dark wood floors, big glass windows overlooking the river, candles on every table, a soft buzz of conversation and clinking glasses. The hostess smiled. "Morrison?" I nodded. "Right this way. Your party is already seated." "Party?" I frowned but followed. There he was. Luther, dressed sharp as ever, navy suit, no tie. He stood when he saw me and smiled, but not the warm kind of smile. It was tight, measured. Beside him sat two men I didn't know, mid-40s, both in matching gray suits, laptops open. One was scrolling through a digital document. The other nodded as I approached. "Mom, these are Brian and Keith," Luther said. "They're financial advisors. I thought it might be helpful if we all talked." I didn't sit. "Not yet. What's this about?" "Just planning," he said. "I think you'll see it makes sense." I sat down slowly. My palms were cold. Brian leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, we've reviewed your property and financial holdings and drafted a simple document that would allow Luther and Talia to assist with managing your assets. You'd still be in full control, of course. This just streamlines everything in case of emergencies." I looked at Luther. He looked back like this was perfectly normal. "I didn't ask for help managing anything," I said. "It's not that you need help, Mom," Luther said. "It's just smart planning. You're almost 70. Things can happen fast. Talia and I just want to be ready." "Talia, of course." I looked down at the paper. They slid toward me. Durable power of attorney, access to my accounts, control over my home, insurance, investments. I pushed the paper back. "I thought this was dinner," I said. My voice was quiet, not weak, just tired. "It is," Luther said. "We just wanted to take care of this first." Then I've lost my appetite. I stood up. They didn't try to stop me. I walked out of Salt House with the scarf around my shoulders and my heart beating like a hammer. That was the moment I realized something awful. I was no longer just their mother. To them, I had become a resource, and they had just crossed the first line. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about the way Luther had looked at me across that table, calm, practiced, like this was all some polite business transaction, not a son talking to his mother. The next morning, I walked around the block twice just to clear my head. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not Edith, not even Janice, who I usually share everything with. I needed time to process it first. I needed to make sure I wasn't overreacting. By the afternoon, I'd stopped wondering if I'd done something wrong. It was clear now, this wasn't just about a wedding. That dinner wasn't about reconnecting. It was about control. And I wasn't sure how far Luther and Talia were willing to go to get it. A week passed, then another. One Thursday, around 3 p.m., I got a text from Luther. "Want to try again? Just you and me. No surprises. I'll behave. Promise." There was a part of me that wanted to believe him, that wanted to believe my son had come to his senses. I waited a few hours before replying. "Dinner at 6:30 works." He picked the same restaurant, Salt House. I paused before replying, but then I told myself it was just a place. It didn't hold power unless I let it. This time, I didn't wear the scarf, just a simple blouse, black slacks, and a thin silver necklace Jerome had given me one Christmas when he was still healthy. I got there on time. Luther was already seated. He stood, gave me a quick hug. He looked fresh, too fresh, like someone who'd had a haircut just for the occasion. There were 2 water glasses on the table, 2 sets of silverware, just us. "I'm glad you came," he said, sliding my chair out. I nodded and sat down. "Let's get to it." He looked surprised. I wasn't there to pretend. The waitress came and took our orders. I asked for the grilled salmon. He ordered a ribeye, rare. He tried small talk for a bit, asked about my neighbor's new puppy. I played along, but I could feel the build-up, the shift in tone that always comes right before something unwanted is said. Sure enough, just after our salads arrived, Luther reached into his bag and pulled out a thin folder. He placed it next to my plate like it was part of the meal. I know last time didn't go well, he said, but I've been thinking. I really just want to make sure you're taken care of. I didn't touch the folder. Taken care of? I asked. Look, Mom, you live alone. You don't really have people around you every day. If something happened, God forbid, you'd want someone who could step in, someone who knows your accounts, your healthcare preferences, everything. I have a brain. And a lawyer, I said, you don't need to get defensive. I'm not defensive, Luther. I'm aware. He sighed and pushed the folder closer. It's just paperwork, a power of attorney. It's nothing dramatic. You'd still have full control. I'd just be there if something went wrong. We'd be ahead of the curve. I looked down at my plate, then back up at him. Is this because I said no to the 70,000? He paused for half a second too long. No, this is separate. I don't believe you. He didn't respond. I opened the folder and skimmed the first page. Durable power of attorney, general authority, access to real estate, bank accounts, insurance, all of it flowing to him. Who wrote this up? Keith, one of the guys you met last time. So, the men you brought to our last dinner are now preparing legal documents for me, without me asking. He looked irritated now. You're being difficult. No, I'm being deliberate. That's when Talia showed up. She wasn't supposed to be there. She walked in like it was her birthday, wearing a cream blouse and a skirt that looked like it belonged in a lifestyle magazine. She kissed Luther on the cheek and sat down next to him without asking. Oh, good, she said cheerfully. You got her to come. I stared at her. This was supposed to be between me and my son. Talia tilted her head. I just wanted to support him. We're all family, Lisa. You've known me less than 4 years. She ignored the comment and picked up the folder. Luther showed me this. It's smart, clean, gives everyone peace of mind, especially since, memory issues can creep in slowly. My eyes locked on hers. Do you think I have memory issues? No, not yet. But you did call me Tara once at brunch. I took a deep breath. That was your cousin's name, and you two look almost identical. Well, she said lightly, it's just better to prepare now while everything's still working fine. That was enough. I closed the folder, set it aside, and picked up my napkin, folded it slowly, placed it on the table. This isn't concern. This is pressure. Talia opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand. I'm not signing anything, and if you try this again, I'll take it further. Luther leaned forward. Further how? You'll find out. I stood. Talia blinked, unsure if she should get up too. You've both made it very clear what you value. It's not me. It's not family. It's access. I turned to leave. Mom, wait, Luther called out. I didn't. I walked out of Salt House for the second time in 2 weeks, but this time I wasn't shaken. I was sure. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my patience. And something told me I was just getting started. I drove home without the radio on, just the hum of the tires and my thoughts. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was clear. Something in me had shifted like a curtain being pulled back. They thought I was easy to manage. They thought age had softened my spine. They were wrong. When I got home, I kicked off my shoes, made a cup of chamomile tea, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a new document and titled it Salt House Attempt 2. Then I started writing. The date, the time, who was present, what they said, the exact language Talia used. How Luther slid the folder across the table like it was nothing. I added bullet points. I attached a scanned copy of the document I'd taken from the first dinner. I'd kept it just in case. Always been the type to hold on to receipts, literal and otherwise. Once I got it all down, I opened another folder on my desktop and labeled it Estate Protection. That night, I slept like a rock. The next morning, I called Edith. Edith Gray is 74, retired accountant, sharp as ever. She volunteers twice a week at the senior center, helping women sort out taxes and insurance forms. We met at the grocery store a few years ago when she spotted me squinting at the label on a can of tomato sauce and said, "That one is too much sugar." She was right, and we've been friends ever since. I told her everything, from the wedding request to the second dinner. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said, "You're going to need someone who doesn't just balance books. You need legal firepower." I was thinking the same. I said, "You know anyone?" Marcia Cleary, downtown. She used to teach estate law before going into private practice. Fierce woman. She's not the kind to get steamrolled. That same afternoon, I called Marcia's office. The woman who answered spoke in a tone that let me know this wasn't their first call like mine. "We help a lot of women your age navigate situations like this," she said. "Let's schedule a meeting." I felt something in me begin to breathe again. While I waited for the appointment, I kept documenting. Every interaction, every email Luther sent, every text from Talia. I took screenshots. I printed hard copies. I logged dates and times. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being prepared. And while I was at it, I started going back in my mind, way back. I remembered when Luther was 19 and needed emergency dental surgery. His insurance had lapsed. I covered it, $3,600. When he moved to Charlotte after college, I co-signed the lease on his first apartment. He was between jobs, couldn't get approved on his own. I paid the deposit and first month's rent. The year after that, he called me from the airport in Los Angeles. Someone had cloned his credit card. He said he needed money to get home. I wired him $400 that same hour. A week later, I found out from one of his old roommates that the charge was his. He just overspent. I forgave him, told myself he was learning. Have you ever made excuses for someone you love just to avoid a deeper truth? If this moment hit close to home, hit like so more women like us know they're not alone, and don't forget to subscribe to hear the rest of how I finally stood up for myself. I think I kept telling myself that until I couldn't anymore. And then there was Talia. I started seeing the signs early. The way she corrected people in public. The way she always had to be the one talking. The way she looked at waitstaff like they were inconveniences. I brushed it off, trying not to be that mother. I didn't want to make waves. But now, the dots were connecting. The sudden urgency, the documents, the repeated mention of my age, and living alone. This wasn't about concern. It was about control, about access, about money, my money. By the time I walked into Marcia Cleary's office the following Tuesday, I had everything in a neat black folder. She took her time reading through it all. When she looked up, she said, "You're not overreacting. You're catching this early, and that matters." I nodded. I'm not trying to cut my son out of my life, but I won't be boxed into a corner either. Marcia smiled. "Then let's set it up so no one can push you around." We spent the next hour reviewing my accounts, assets, insurance, and my condo. Everything I owned, we went over it. She recommended an irrevocable living trust, which meant I'd still control my assets, but they'd be legally protected from outside interference. Luther wouldn't have access, and neither would Talia. She also suggested I update my healthcare directives and add a clause about who could and couldn't make decisions if something happened to me. "Who do you trust?" she asked. "Edith," I said without hesitation. Marcia nodded. "Then we make her the backup power of attorney, just in case." I walked out of that office feeling taller, not because I had more power, but because I finally stopped pretending this wasn't happening. Back at home, I told Edith everything. She brought over her laptop and helped me review every clause. We sat at the table like two old hens with a plan. No drama, no panic, just focus. That night, I made a small pot of chili, poured myself a glass of wine, and opened my window to listen to the sound of the breeze pushing through the pine trees out back. Luther didn't know it yet, but the next time he tried to make a move, he'd be the one holding the wrong cards. 2 weeks after that meeting with Marcia, everything was signed, notarized, and filed. My house, my investments, my insurance, all of it was now protected under an irrevocable living trust. Marcia helped me name a trustee that made sense, the Wilmington Literacy Alliance, a small, local nonprofit I've volunteered with before. They run reading programs and adult education courses. It felt right. It also made it near impossible for Luther to make a claim that I'd left everything floating or mismanaged. Marcia made one thing clear. This trust isn't about cutting people out. It's about setting terms. That's exactly what I needed. We also updated my advanced healthcare directives. I listed Edith as my healthcare proxy and added explicit notes that Luther and Talia were not to be involved in any medical decisions. Not because I wished them harm, but because I no longer trusted their intentions. Next came the digital protections. Marcia's assistant helped me lock down my online banking accounts, freeze my credit profile with the major bureaus, and set up alerts for any unusual activity. I created a password document that only Edith had access to. It took an afternoon and a cup of coffee, but by the end of it, I felt like I just closed every open window in my house before a storm. The next day, I got a message from Talia. "Hey Lisa, just thinking of you. Sending love. Here's a great article I found on early signs of cognitive decline in aging parents. Thought it might be helpful, Yellowheart. Helpful." I didn't reply. 2 days later, another one came in. "Have you ever considered a long-term care facility that offers memory support programs? It could give you peace of mind. Luther, and I just want the best for you." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I simply took a screenshot and saved it to the folder I kept labeled patterns. They weren't being subtle anymore. They wanted to build a case, some sort of evidence that I was slipping. But I wasn't. I was preparing. That same week, Edith invited me to join her for a talk she was giving at the senior center. Topic: protecting yourself from financial abuse by family. It hit a nerve. A necessary one. I sat in the back that day, just listening. About 12 women, all over 60. One had signed her house over to her daughter during chemo treatments, only to be evicted 3 months later. Another had her grandson rack up $15,000 in credit card debt under her name. They weren't foolish. They were trusting. That's what got to me. After the session, Edith pulled me aside. "They're starting a volunteer program," she said. "Basic digital safety, financial literacy, teaching people how to read bank statements, spot phishing scams. You think I'd be good at that?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Lisa, you taught college students for 3 decades. These folks are dying to learn from someone who gets it." So I signed up. It started small, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I ran a little class called Protecting What's Yours. We used real-world examples, talked about digital fraud, and even walked through how to freeze a credit report. Word got around. Soon, we had people bringing their sisters, neighbors, church friends. I didn't talk about my own situation, not at first, but one afternoon, a woman named May asked, "What do you do when the threat's not from a stranger? When it's your own child?" I looked around the room. No one said a word, but their faces told me everything. So I told them my story, not for pity, not for revenge, but to let them know it happens to people who plan well, who raise their kids with love, who never thought they'd be seen as an opportunity instead of a person. When I finished, May reached over and touched my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. I thought I was the only one. That night, I went home feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. I didn't need to be angry to take action. I didn't need to be loud to be heard. I just needed to stay steady, focused. Talia continued sending her little check-ins. I didn't respond. Luther stayed quiet, probably waiting for me to fold. But I had folded enough times in my life. Not this time. At the next session, I gave everyone a small binder. Each one had tabs labeled: banking, housing, medical, passwords, contacts. Edith and I printed worksheets and simple guides for each section. We called it Your Own Terms. And that's exactly what I was living by. It was a Friday afternoon when the message came in. This time, it wasn't from Luther or Talia. It was from Talia's mother, Candace. "Hi, Lisa. We're having a little dinner at our place this Sunday evening. Just family. No pressure, just hoping we can all reconnect." I stared at the screen. It was too friendly, too smooth. I didn't trust it. A minute later, a follow-up message came through. "Talia told us things have been tense. We'd love to clear the air and talk openly." I didn't answer right away. I closed my phone and walked out onto the porch. I sat in my favorite chair and let the breeze work through my thoughts. I didn't believe for a second this was just a warm get-together. Not after the last 2 dinners. I texted Marcia and Edith. "Sunday evening, Talia's parents' house. I'm going. You're both coming with me." Marcia replied with one word: "Absolutely." I told Candace I'd be there. I didn't say I was bringing guests. Sunday came fast. I wore a gray blouse, dark jeans, and flats. Clean and simple. Nothing showy. Edith met me at my place, and we drove over together. Marcia said she'd meet us there. Talia's parents lived in a big, newer home just outside the city. Open driveway, expensive landscaping, decorative fountain in the yard. The kind of house that looked like it belonged in a catalog. We pulled up at 6 on the dot. Marcia was already there, standing just outside her car in a navy blazer and flats. No briefcase, just a small leather bag. She nodded at me once. That was all I needed. Candace greeted us at the door, all smiles and perfume. "Lisa, so good to see you." "Oh, ladies, I wasn't expecting." "They're with me?" I said. Candace blinked, then stepped aside. We walked in. The dining table was already set, cloth napkins, wine glasses, 2 unlit candles. Luther and Talia were standing near the kitchen. Talia had a glass of wine in her hand. Luther was dressed like he was headed to a client pitch. He looked surprised when he saw us walk in as a trio. "Mom, you brought guests?" he asked. "Yes." I thought this was about transparency. He didn't say anything to that. We all took our seats. Candace and her husband, Ray, sat at each end of the table. Luther and Talia sat on one side. I sat directly across, flanked by Edith and Marcia. There was a bit of awkward small talk, something about Talia's cousin being pregnant, and a joke about the weather. I just listened. I didn't speak until Luther pulled a folder from a drawer in the sideboard. He placed it on the table. The air changed. "We've been talking with a new firm," he said. "They're helping us make sure the family is protected." Talia smiled tightly. "It's just a more formal version of what we talked about before. We made adjustments so you'd feel more comfortable." Luther slid the folder toward me. I didn't touch it. "What kind of adjustments?" I asked. "A simplified guardianship." Talia said, You'd still have your independence, but we'd help with bigger decisions, just to avoid any confusion. Luther added, also, there's a suggestion from the firm that we transfer some of your liquid assets into a family account. It helps minimize tax burdens. It's just smart planning. Marcia cleared her throat. That would qualify as unauthorized transfer of funds under state law unless she signed willingly, which she hasn't and won't. Candace's head turned. What's going on here? Marcia leaned forward, calm and clear. Lisa has already taken steps to protect her estate. Everything is in a trust, fully legal, fully documented, and any further attempt to coerce her, directly or indirectly, will be treated as elder harassment. Ray looked uncomfortable now. Elder harassment? Yes, Marcia said plainly. We've kept records, dates, emails, texts. There's also footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera of Luther loitering around her garage at night, trying to check in. I pulled out a small folder from my bag and slid it across the table. You can look if you'd like. It includes every message, every article you two sent me about dementia, along with screenshots of your suggestion that I consider a memory care facility. That wasn't concern. That was pressure. Talia shifted in her seat. We were just trying to be proactive. Trying to get access, I said. Luther finally broke his silence. Why are you doing this? We're your family. You're right, I said, but family doesn't try to trick someone into signing away their life just because they say no to a wedding budget. Talia's face turned red. She looked toward her parents for backup, but they were silent. Candace looked shocked. Ray looked down at the table. I'm not signing anything, I continued. And from this point forward, if either of you continues to contact me about finances, I'll take it to court. Marcia slid a letter across the table. This is a formal cease and desist notice. I'd advise you both to take it seriously. Luther shook his head. I can't believe you'd bring lawyers into this. I didn't bring them, I said. You brought them the day you slid that first folder across my dinner plate at Salt House. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted and had to keep calm while standing your ground, share this video. Someone you know needs to hear that quiet strength is still strength. And if you're still watching, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Talia stared at me. You act like we're criminals. I act like someone who's not going to be used, I said. I stood up. Edith did too. Marcia zipped her bag closed. I came tonight, so there'd be no more confusion, I said. So you'd know where the line is. You crossed it. You don't get to do that again. Luther looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something that wasn't arrogance or calculation. I saw fear. I walked out the front door with my head high. Just before we got into the car, I said to Marcia, he thought I'd show up unarmed. Marcia looked over and smiled. You never do. I blocked Luther's number the day after the dinner. It wasn't out of anger. It was peace. There had been too many twists and emotional knots tied around our conversations. Every time the phone buzzed, I found myself holding my breath. That wasn't how I wanted to live. I wanted stillness, and I needed room to heal. After that, things became quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, it feels earned. I got back to my Tuesday and Thursday sessions at the senior center. More people had signed up since word spread about the Your Own Terms binders. Edith and I had to order more chairs and print extra copies. A few women even brought their daughters or nieces to sit in. We added a new segment to the class called Recognizing Manipulation Within the Family. Edith handled the numbers side, how to read account statements, spot red flags, and check for unauthorized withdrawals. I handled the conversations, the emotional side, the part where love and pressure blur together. I never mentioned Luther, by name. But the women knew. Most of them had stories of their own, sons who borrowed money and never repaid it, daughters who moved in just for a while and never left, grandkids who started asking questions about wills a little too early. One woman, Connie, said her son talked her into selling her house and moving into a condo he picked out. The sale went through, and she found out later the down payment was used for his business. Another, June, said her daughter created a joint bank account for easier access in case of emergencies, and then slowly started draining it to pay for personal travel. These weren't bad mothers. These weren't foolish women. They were kind, and they were worn out from carrying guilt that didn't belong to them. Each time I spoke, I looked them in the eye and told them what I had learned the hard way. You can love your family and still say no. That simple truth changed something in the room. Every time I said it, one Thursday after class, Edith pulled me aside. We should host a one-day workshop, she said. Make it bigger. Bring in Marcia to talk legal protections, maybe even someone from the state office on elder rights. I like that idea, I said. Let's make it happen. We booked the church hall near the public library for the second Saturday in April. Edith handled the budget, and I drafted the outline and invitation flyers. We called it Standing Strong, Tools for Protecting Yourself Without Breaking Your Family. I figured if even 10 women showed up, it would be a success. We had 47. Women came from across the county, some carpooling, others brought in by adult children who thought they were coming to a health seminar. One woman told me she came because her neighbor saw the flyer and said, "You need this more than you think." Marcia gave a short talk about how to create a will that can't be challenged. A local social worker explained how to report financial coercion without triggering a family war. I spoke last. I told them how I'd nearly signed something I didn't fully read because it came wrapped in words like safety and love. I explained how pressure doesn't always show up in shouting. It often hides in charm, in guilt, in smiles that come with conditions. When I finished, a woman from the back stood up and asked, "Do you regret how it ended with your son?" I paused for a moment. "No," I said, "I regret how long I let it go before I drew the line." There was no applause, just a few nods, a deep kind of silence that meant something had landed. Afterward, as we packed up, Edith leaned over and said, "You're not just rebuilding, Lisa, you're reshaping." That stuck with me. I wasn't the same person I'd been 6 months earlier. I was slower to trust, maybe a little more guarded. But I also felt stronger, steadier. At home, I started taking care of things I'd put off for years. Cleaned out the guest room closet. Donated clothes I hadn't worn in over a decade. Started walking every morning down by the marina. Not to escape anything, just to be with my own thoughts in peace. I even started journaling again. I hadn't done that since Jerome passed. I wrote about what I'd learned, what I wanted to leave behind. Not just money, but clarity, dignity, example. There were still moments that tugged at my heart. I won't pretend there weren't. A song on the radio, a family photo tucked in a drawer. The old voicemail from Luther I hadn't deleted yet. The one where he called to tell me he landed a big client and wanted to take me to lunch to celebrate. Those memories weren't erased, but they no longer had the power to pull me under. One Sunday after church, Edith and I sat outside on the bench near the rose garden. She sipped her tea, and I had a little travel mug of coffee. She looked over and said, "You've come through the storm." I smiled, not untouched, but I'm still standing. She nodded. That's the point. And she was right. It was early May when I heard the news, not from Luther, not even from Talia, but from a woman I know from church. Her name's Denise. She runs the Tuesday prayer circle and knows just about everything before it hits social media. She caught me by the coffee urn and said, "Lisa, I heard your grandson was born. A boy, right?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Oh, I thought you already knew. Talia had the baby last Friday. They named him Jace. Cute name." I didn't show anything on my face. I just nodded and poured my coffee. I went home and sat in the living room for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel much of anything at first. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just a dull ache. Not being told about the birth. That wasn't what hurt the most. It was knowing that they could keep something that big from me and feel nothing about it. That night, Talia sent me a message. "We wanted to give you space, but we do want you in Jace's life. This tension between us has to end. For his sake." It was neatly worded, guilt wrapped in politeness. She followed it with a photo. The baby was sleeping, wrapped in a pale green blanket. His nose reminded me of Luther when he was small. There was no denying that. I stared at that photo longer than I'd like to admit. Then I shut my phone and didn't reply. Instead, I called Marcia first thing the next morning. She listened quietly as I told her what happened. When I was done, she said, "It's okay to love that baby and still protect yourself. I don't want to punish him." I said, "But I can't walk back into their house like nothing happened." Then we put boundaries in writing. She said, "On your terms." So that's what we did. Later that afternoon, I typed up a letter. Nothing dramatic, just clear. To Luther and Talia, I received word of Jace's birth, and I'm glad to hear he arrived safely. I wish him health and happiness as he begins his life. I'm open to meeting my grandson and building a relationship with him, but only if the following conditions are respected. No discussion of my estate, finances, or trust in any form, verbal, written, or indirect. All meetings will take place through Michael, my nephew. He will coordinate location and schedule, and he will attend all visits. This is for my comfort and clarity. Any attempts to change the arrangement, pressure for additional access, or sidestep the agreement will end contact immediately. These boundaries are not negotiable. If you're willing to meet under these terms, I'm open to starting slowly. Sincerely, Mom. I printed the letter, signed it, scanned it, and sent it through Marcia's office. She'd made it an official communication from her law firm to remove any confusion. Michael called me that evening. "You sure about this, Aunt Lisa?" he asked. "You want me in the middle?" "You're not in the middle," I said. "You're the bridge. You're neutral. That's the only way I'll do this." He agreed. I didn't hear anything for 3 days. Then Michael texted. "They agreed to your terms. First visit can be this Sunday at the library children's room. Noon. I'll be there." I felt a lump rise in my throat. Not fear. Not even nervousness. Just something fragile I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Sunday came. I wore a simple lavender top and flats. No makeup. Just moisturizer and a little lip balm. Michael met me at the entrance, gave me a quick side hug, and led me inside. Talia was already there. No Luther. That was part of the agreement. She was seated at one of the child-sized tables, holding Jace in her arms. When she saw me, she stood up slowly. We didn't hug. She handed me the baby with a stiff smile. "Here you go. He just ate." I took him carefully. He was warm and soft, with a tiny patch of dark hair on his head and a yawn that made my heart squeeze. I sat down in the reading corner and rocked gently in one of the low chairs. I didn't talk much, just held him and watched his little face twitch and stretch. Talia scrolled on her phone the whole time. Michael sat nearby, quiet and alert. After about 30 minutes, she stood. "We've got to head out." I nodded and stood too. I handed Jace back, gently patting his back, once more before letting go. "Thanks for coming," she said. I didn't respond. I just looked at my grandson one more time and turned toward the door. Michael followed me out. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm okay," I said, and I meant it. This wasn't the fairy tale reunion you see in movies, but it was real, and it was on my terms, and that was enough. It's Tuesday evening, and I'm setting up chairs in the small activity room at the community center. The windows let in the last of the daylight, and the air smells faintly of brewed coffee and old carpet. There are 8 chairs in a circle, just like always. There's no whiteboard, no projector, just people, stories, and truth. We call it the Strong Roots Circle. It's a place where women come not to vent, but to rebuild. Most of them are over 60. Some come quietly, slipping in with their coats still on. Others bring baked goods or articles they clipped from the newspaper. They don't all look the same, but they carry the same weight. Family betrayal, manipulation, loss of trust. That kind of wound doesn't leave a bruise you can see, but it leaves a mark all the same. I take a seat and flip through my little notebook. It's not fancy, just lined paper and a pen, but I jot down the themes for the night. Emotional boundaries, personal worth, financial protection. At 6:05, the first few women arrive. May, from the west side of town. Judy, who finally stopped letting her son borrow her debit card. Eileen, whose daughter called her selfish when she said she didn't want to co-sign a loan. They greet one another like old friends. When everyone's seated, I look around the circle and smile. "Before we start," I say, "I want to remind us of something we often forget." I pause for just a moment, then say clearly, "You can love your children, but loving them doesn't mean surrendering your rights." There's a silence in the room, not because it's awkward, but because it's real. Then May nods, just once. That's the part one didn't know I was allowed to believe. And that's when I know it's working. These sessions aren't about fixing everything overnight. They're about taking back pieces of ourselves that we've given away, thinking we had no choice. It's not about bitterness. It's about balance. Later that evening, as the circle winds down, Judy lingers behind. She walks over with her tote bag on her shoulder and says, "Lisa, you ever think about teaching again? Just in a different kind of classroom?" I laugh. This is the only kind of classroom I want to be in now. She pats my arm, and I see it in her eyes, the relief, the shift. She's walking straighter. That's enough for me. Back home, I settle into the little writing desk in my den. I've been working on something slowly. It's not a book, not a course, just thoughts, notes, the kind I wish I'd had 10 years ago. Maybe one day I'll print them out. Maybe not. There's a photo of Jace on my desk now, just one. Michael took it at the second library visit. Jace is holding a soft cloth book and gnawing on the corner. It makes me smile. We've had 2 more meetings since that first one. No drama, just short, structured time. Talia doesn't speak much, and I'm okay with that. The visits aren't about her. They're about planting a seed in that little boy that I hope will grow into something honest. Luther still hasn't reached out directly. That's fine. I've let go of the version of motherhood where everything has to be perfect to be real. Love can exist with distance. Boundaries don't cancel it out. They preserve it. I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately. We often tie it to money, what we leave behind in bank accounts or wills. But I think the bigger legacy is how we teach people to treat us, how we model self-respect, even when it's uncomfortable, how we walk away from things that don't honor who we are. I wish more women knew they could do that. At the next support circle, I plan to talk about grief and release, how sometimes we grieve the relationship we wanted, not the one we had, and how letting go doesn't mean giving up. It just means we're not dragging around what's too heavy anymore. If someone had told me a year ago I'd be doing this, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I am, not just surviving, but teaching again. Not in a college classroom, in a room full of women with soft hands, strong hearts, and stories that matter. Before I end this, let me say something directly to you, the one listening or watching right now. If you've ever felt like your kindness was mistaken for weakness, if someone you love has crossed a line and you don't know how to come back from it, if you've ever sat in silence wondering if it's okay to say, no more, let me remind you, it is. You don't owe anyone access to your peace, not even your children. You are not just a wallet. You are not a backup plan. You are not here to be managed. You're allowed to have limits, and you're allowed to be loved within those limits. If that sentence gave you goosebumps, don't just keep it to yourself. Like this video so YouTube knows women like us still have a voice. Comment below if you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you love. And if you're ready for more honest stories like this one, hit subscribe. Thank you for listening.